Congratulations.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, great job, kiddo.
Thanks, Grandpa.
So, what's your 15-year plan?
Oh no, not this again.
Do you have a job yet?
Give me some time. Every time he comes over, he makes me feel like a kid again.
I don't know. Jobs seem hard.
Your estimated wait time is 97 minutes.
97 minutes? Come on!
All right, here it is. I pulled the MLS data on this luxurious short sale, and it seems to be priced pretty appropriately according to the CMA, and depending on your DP, you may not even have to pay PMI.
Huh?
Who's on the clock for steps? I just went. Gross.
It's not working. The only choices I have is a lion, wagon, and zebra.
Sounds like you're gonna lose.
She really is beautiful.
Thank you.
And congratulations again.
Thank you.
You got it from here, okay? All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Honey.
Sir, what's your number?
What number?
Next.
The test results are in. The diagnosis is rheumatoid arthritis.
What's a rumored artist? Excuse me? Yes? I thought refills on juice were free.
I'll go ask my manager.
Good.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, are you okay?
Adulting is hard.
I don't know if you've ever been in those shoes before, but I really think juice refills should be free. I don't know, maybe you would disagree, but I think there's something valuable about free juice. Anyway, hey, we're glad you're here. My name is Scott Johnson, and I'm the lead pastor here. And if this is your first time here, I want to say thank you. You adulted this morning. You set an alarm, and you acted responsible, and you did something outside of the realm of just sleeping in, which, let's be honest, there's part of us that wanted to. I was talking to Bryce earlier today, and he was like, oh, I had to be up so early yesterday, and now I had to wake up early today. And I'm like, we'll make it worth it. I'll get you out early. Cowboys start at noon. Rumor has it. That's adulting, right? Like, I'm making a wise decision because I want to watch the Cowboys too. Hey, but I don't know where you were on Wednesday. Did you know Wednesday was actually make your bed day? And I saw that and I thought, this is really incredible. This is a great way to adult. And so I hope that you made your bed on Wednesday, and then maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. But regardless, this term adulting, right? It's an awkward word. It's a word that maybe you thought we just made up, but it's a word that actually the internet made up. And by the internet, somebody in the interwebs, they decided to term this idea of adulting that we call adulting today. It's basically the act of you doing what a normal, sane adult would do. It's you performing those mundane tasks on a regular basis. It's like showing up on time for your job. It's showing up on time to pick up your kids. It's paying your taxes. Adulting could be considered flossing, but let's be honest, let's don't be too much of an overachiever, right? Maybe if you floss once a month, you're adulting. Like maybe that could be the truth, but isn't it true that in most instances when it comes to these mundane tasks, this adulting reality, there's things that we can figure out. I mean, we can figure out how to pay our taxes. If we forget how to pay our taxes, there is an entire organization in our government that will remind you how to do it. So you don't have to worry much about it, right? You can figure out how to be on time to pick up your kids. There's notifications and apps like crazy for that. I mean, you can figure out just about anything in life when it comes to adulting through YouTube or through the channels of asking a younger teenager, hey, how do I do this? And most of them will say, there's an app for that. Let me show you. And they'll walk you through how to figure out technology. But one of the things we said last week is while the mundane can be overwhelming at times, we can figure it out. The thing that makes adulting so hard is it's actually what lies beneath the surface of our adult hearts that keeps us from adulting well. We can't necessarily pinpoint it. We can't necessarily, this is what is causing the strife. This is what is causing the struggle. But we know there's something underneath. There's a tension, there's a struggle beneath the surface that keeps us from being able to adult well, that keeps us from being able to be who we know we desperately want to be. And last week, we talked about one of those things that's underneath the surface. It's this identity crisis we have. This identity of who we are. What does that look like? And one of the things we said last week when it comes to our identity is this, is when we define who we are, our identity is circumstantial. Oh, when we define what we do, Breathe, Scott, breathe. One of the things we said last week was, when what we do defines who we are, our identity is circumstantial, fearful, and fragile. When what we do defines who we are, it becomes very difficult, right? When we are defined by what we do, we want to win. We don't ever want to be a loser. We don't want to lose at life, so we try to do everything we can to win, or we do everything we can to not take risk because the fear that's there keeps us from wanting to be known as a loser. When what we do defines who we are, it becomes circumstantial. When a relationship falls apart, our role or our definition of that identity goes by the wayside. And what do we do when all we have is what we do? How do we navigate? How do we go through life? And one of the things we talked about last week is there's an alternative to this. There's an alternative to your identity being based upon what you do, and it's based upon what God has done for you. It's based upon who Jesus is in light of what you've done. And we talked about this reality as far as putting our faith in Jesus, and that when it comes to having a relationship with Jesus, we don't have to have the fear of failure because Jesus has already paid the price for us, that we get to receive this idea of being a son or a daughter of God, and it changes and challenges our outlook on life. And so today we're gonna take a step beyond identity, and we're gonna look at another thing that lies beneath the surface. We're gonna look at another thing that oftentimes lies beneath the reality of who we are, and it's this one simple word, trust. Trust. Isn't that a fun word? I mean, when you think about that 5-letter word, you're probably challenged to think, okay, I don't know that I can ever do that, or I've lost that, or somebody has never trusted me. And whatever you think of when you think of trust, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you what I think of when I think of trust. And when I was a sophomore at Texas A&M University, I wanted to go that summer and work outside of the state of Texas. There was these camps everywhere. You had Kanakuk Camp, you had camps at Sky Ranch. I mean, there are camps all over the place for little kids and up to like teenagers to go and have fun. And so I thought the perfect summer job would be working at a camp all summer long. And I had been in Texas for several years at this point, and I wanted nothing more to get out of Texas. And so I found a camp. There was one in Missouri and one in Arkansas. And I found a camp in Arkansas that would allow me to work all summer long. So I said, sign me up. And they accepted me. And then I began looking and I said, oh, wait a second. I can get paid like $20 extra a week if I'm on the ropes course team. And I said, sign me up. I mean, you're thinking $20 extra a week. I mean, we're already making, I think it was like 12 cents an hour. So, $20 a week was a bump up in the pay scale, right? It's like, hey, we'll give you this little paycheck. You need to work 24/7 for 2 weeks with these crazy, ridiculous kids that they're just gonna come and they're gonna be in your cabin and have fun. I'm like, ropes course it is. Like, give me extra money, however I have to do it. And so we began this process of doing the ropes course at Camp Ozark, and I had never really been one to jump out of trees when I was growing up. I mean, I like to climb them, but that is what it is. But I found out whenever you do the ropes course, it is a incredible journey of trust. Because I remember one time there was this really, really, really big guy that was on the ropes course team, and I'm thinking, that's the guy I want to be saving me. But he actually had to go through the ropes course, and there was this petite, she couldn't even be 5 feet tall. I mean, just incredibly small girl. And they put the two of them together. They said, okay, I want you to control him. And so she's back there and she did everything she could, and all of a sudden he fell, and I'll never forget, her feet went off the ground. The good news is the camp directors expected that, and they had a bigger guy behind her holding the harness so that when he did go up, or when she did go up, they were able to somewhat control his falling. And so he stopped before he hit the ground. That's a good thing. But when it came to the ropes course, one of the things that we got to do is they walked all of our ropes course team together. They said, hey, here's what we need to do. We need you to know that in order for this to be successful, you need to be able to trust each other. And so they took us through this litany of different things. And one of the things they sent us through was this thing called a trust fall. I don't know if you've ever heard of a trust fall before. But a trust fall is basically this. You are standing on a ledge. You're standing with your back to the people behind you, and you basically are just falling backwards for the rest of the world to catch you. If you've never seen it, I thought we could experiment for a second. Can I get a few volunteers? I've got a few people that are ready to come and catch me. If you want to catch me, come on up here. I know there's a couple that are walking up. I need 6 guys real quick. I got 1, 2, 3. Let me see here. Mike, you're smiling. Come on up here. 4, 5. And okay, Jeff, I trust you, okay? Here's what I need you to do. I'm gonna show you what a trust fall is really quickly. And I see there's some people in our church right now that are like, oh, don't fall, all right? So y'all don't have anything against me, right?
We'll find out.
All right, good. Here's what I need you to get in a line, straight line, okay? No, I'm sorry, face this way. Somebody else, please, all right. I might trade you out for my mom. She can't drop me, right? I might break her, but that's the, okay. Here, I need y'all to put your hands like this, okay? And alternate one after one after one, okay? So this is how a trust fall would work, is you would have somebody that's raised up above, and they're basically just falling back into this array of hands, all right? And so here's what I need you to do. Make sure your hands are flat. I'm gonna just ask you, dude, Thank you, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna say a few words. Like I'm gonna say, Lord help us all, right? I mean, so I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna say ready, and then you say ready, okay? So let's just practice. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, then I will say falling and you say fall. Falling.
Fall.
Okay, I think you're good. I think you're good. I think you're ready, okay? Now, so I will stand like this. Now, one of the things I've been told, and when I was practicing this, and even at Camp Ozark, they said, if you're falling, don't bend over, okay? If you bend over, it's what they call funnel butt, and you just like funnel. No funnel butt today, all right? Are you ready? You ready? Okay. All right. Hey, all right, is our insurance up to date, Simon? Okay, good. Just checking. All right, ready?
Ready.
Falling.
Fall.
Well done. Hey, good job. Good job. Hey, give it up for our incredible catchers. I survived. So that is a trust fall. I mean, I am standing here on the edge, and the good news is I at least knew about all 6 of those. At least my wife knew where they lived so that she could respond accordingly. But there's trust when it came to falling. And isn't it true that when it comes to adulting, every single one of us has relationships left and right? And couldn't it be said that the majority of our relationships are a lot like trust falls? The majority of our relationships are a lot like a trust fall where we're constantly standing and we're just hoping and praying that our friends are right behind us, and we're just falling back into them and they catch us and we're so grateful. And then we flounder, we make a mistake, we do something we wish we wouldn't have, and we fall back into that friendship and they catch us. And then something happens and we fall back into that friendship and they catch us and they catch us. And then what happens when they don't? What happens when we're sitting there in the midst of the struggle and we're wondering, is anybody going to be able to catch us? Is anybody going to be able to help us? Is there anybody that is going to be able to walk with us? Isn't it true That for many of us, our relationships are just a bunch of repeated trust falls where we're just hoping and praying that somebody is there to catch. We're praying that that person that we really, really, really want to be there will be there to catch us. But what do we do when they're not there? What happens in that moment when we begin to wonder, is there going to be somebody to catch us? What's going to happen when they drop? Maybe you're sitting in here today and you've experienced that. Maybe from a marriage perspective, you're sitting there and you're hoping and praying that there's not another trust fall that has to happen, but all of a sudden there's just this catch and catch, and you're just praying, wait a second, where did my safety net go? Maybe it's a relationship with a friend. Maybe it's a relationship with a significant other that you're thinking, this is going to be the one. I can't wait to take them home to meet my mama. And then all of a sudden they just forgot to catch you. And you're like, this is not the kind of person I want to take to my mama. Maybe for you, it's a coworker, it's a neighbor. When you think about all the relationships we have in life, isn't it true that everywhere we turn, there are relationships? There's relationships we have with our neighbors. Some of us, we don't want to see our neighbors. We've seen them one too many times. Some of us, the relationships with the coworker. We know our coworkers in and out. We know what's going on. We struggle with the fact that we already have to see them Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Maybe we get a 980 so that we don't have to see them every other Friday, but that's just kind of what our hope and prayer is. But isn't it true that the most important thing in a relationship is trust? The most important thing that you could put in any relationship is the gift of trust. And one of the reasons that adulting is hard is because relationships aren't optional. Everywhere we turn, there are relationships that are necessity. Everywhere we turn, we have connections with people. We've got a coworker that we're trusting they're doing their job. We've got a neighbor that we're trusting that they are cutting their grass. We've got kids that we're trusting that when they go to school, they're gonna behave and they're gonna make you proud. We've got teenagers that are learning to drive and we're trusting that, no, we're just not giving them a driver's license, right? I mean, but isn't it true that adulting is hard because relationships aren't optional, but there's more to it than this. Adulting is hard because relationships aren't optional, which makes trust required, which makes the reality that we have to have trust in every scenario of life, which can be difficult because at times trust is a problem. I mean, in every unhealthy relationship you've ever had, trust has probably been the central point of the problem. I mean, you could take it back to middle school. I mean, you think about your middle school friendships, there was probably significant trust issues. And then you continue forward, which makes adulting incredibly hard because trust is not an option. So what do we do? What do we do with this unfortunate reality? Well, one way of putting it, and just to kind of get us thinking about a relationship and trust is I would say that a relationship without trust is like a car without gas. You can sit in it all you want, but it's not going anywhere. So how do we make sure that all of our relationships have gas? How do we make sure that everything we do gets us somewhere? Well, today what I want us to do is we're gonna, in the moments we have remaining, we're gonna kind of land the plane and talk about how do we regain trust. And I want you to know from the forefront, one of the hardest things in adulting is that we have to have trust. And I'm not sitting here saying that there's a reality that you have to have trust with everybody. That's not where I'm going. Because there's probably been some people in your life that have hurt you and hurt you to the core. And for me to come up in just a 20-minute segment and say, you need to trust them again, that's probably something that would require more than just one message and more than just me. There's probably counselors and a lot of conversations that need to go into that. But isn't it true that when one person robs us of being able to trust, oftentimes it affects the rest of the relationships around us? Isn't it true that when somebody has hurt us, oftentimes it's not just that person that's there, it's every relationship around us begins to feel the shrapnel of the broken trust. So how did we get there? How did we get to a point where trust was broken? Well, one of the key things I've seen in different relationships is there's one word that sits at the forefront of a broken relationship or broken trust. And it's the word expectation. It's this idea of an expectation. I mean, for me, when I fell off the stage, I expected these crazies to catch me. But what happens when they don't? What happens when the expectation we put on the relationship falls flat? What happens when the fact that you knew that he would never cheat on you and all of a sudden you come into a relationship and you're like, wait a second. What happens when you knew that your kids were gonna turn out and be the best kids they could possibly be, and the next thing you know, you get a call from the police and you're like, this isn't my kids, what's going on? What happens when we have a relationship with a friend and there's an expectation, there's a trust level, there's a relationship between me and a parent, there's a relationship, we've got this situated, but for whatever reason, the expectation was not met. What happens in those moments? You see, when our experience doesn't meet our expectation, we lose trust. There's a gap. There's a gap between what we expected and what we experience. There's a gap between what we expected would happen and the experiences that we realized. So what do we do in those moments? See, I would even say that there's this gap in the expectation we could take even to another level. Because when our experience doesn't meet our expectation, we can lose our ability to trust and really to trust anybody. So what do we do? How do we ensure that broken relationship that really hurt our trust doesn't affect every single relationship? Well, it's fascinating. I really believe that love and trust are inexplicably connected. I believe that when it comes to love and trust, there is a thread between both of those that are so vital in every relationship we have. There's a thread between loving someone and trusting someone that is valuable. In fact, it's so valuable, we're gonna lean into something that the Apostle Paul is possibly one of the most influential individuals when it comes to the world of Christianity as we know it today. The Apostle Paul, who was at one point an individual who hated followers of Jesus, he experienced Jesus in a way that no one could have ever imagined, and as a result of that experience, he became a follower of Jesus. This individual saw love like never before. He saw love on a grand scale to such a degree that he was able to write about it. In fact, in his letter to the church at Corinth, which is where we're gonna be today, he scripted this letter out, and where we're gonna be, you've probably heard it said, you've probably heard it read. In fact, many of you probably heard it at your weddings. Maybe it was sung at your weddings. Maybe it was spoken. Maybe it was one of those you're like, that's at every wedding, I'm not putting it in mine. Like wherever you're at, where we're gonna look at today is probably a passage that's not super unfamiliar, but it is a passage that I think goes beyond just the wedding day and goes into every relationship we have. So Paul, in 1 Corinthians 13, he says this, love is, which I feel compelled to stop here because we love a lot of things in our culture. I love ice cream. I love coffee. I love going to bed at a decent time. I love my wife. I love hot dogs with cream cheese and crumbled Ruffles and chili. I mean, if you haven't tried it, don't knock it. You're gonna have to go home. I've compelled you, right? Like, there are things that I love in life that I want to share with you. But isn't it true? That's right. It's a hot dog bun. You grill the hot dog. You put cream cheese on the side where you would put mayonnaise. You're thinking, yeah, don't put mayonnaise don't put mayonnaise anywhere in your life, all right? And then you put chili and you just top it with crumbled up Ruffles. Free, take it home, do with it what you want. Back to Paul, all right? Sorry about that. Paul's talking about this idea of love, and it's a loaded word because we love so many things, and we love so many things with so many different realms of reality. The way I love my hot dog is a lot different than the way I love my wife. The way I love my wife, just saying. I don't know who's out there. Back to Paul, all right? Back. You can't take me anywhere anyway. But what Paul is saying is that the way we love certain things in life is different depending upon the thing it is. I love my Aggies and I love my Astros. I do love the Rangers, but not near as much as my Astros. I love my dog as long as he's not barking, but I really do love him, I promise, on Tuesdays, right? We have this reality of what we love, and it's at a different level. But when Paul is saying this, he's saying, we want you to love to a different degree. In fact, he uses the word in the Greek, there's 4 different words for the word love that all mean, that we've all kind of encompassed into the same word. And when Paul is writing this, he actually is saying agape, which basically agape is this. It's this idea of selfless love. It's this idea of completely putting others before yourself. Agape is basically it's characterized by sacrificing your own needs, sacrificing your own desires, sacrificing what you want for the good of somebody else. Agape is swallowing one's pride to make somebody else's life better. It's leveraging your talents so that they can succeed. Agape is all about putting me in the back burner of somebody else's winning story. And Paul is sitting here saying, agape is, love is what love is supposed to be. It is this selfless, self-giving, sacrificial love that is beautiful and valuable. In fact, this agape word, this agape love, many of you have heard us talk about this question. It's a valuable question. A question that Andy Stanley, who's one of our teaching communicators, he's the lead pastor at North Point Community Church where we've networked with. He's made this question so valuable, this idea of what does love require of me? And we've grabbed that question from a statement that Jesus made in John chapter 13, 35. And he says this, 34, a new commandment I give you, love one another, agape one another. How does that look? As I have loved you, which we saw last week what Jesus did for us, so you must love one another. Paul says the definition of love is a selfless, sacrificial love that we got to see exemplified through the life of Jesus. So he continues on and he says, love is, and he goes into this incredible tirade of what love is. And he says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. How many relationships do we have where we see this played out? Where we don't verbalize it, but in the back of our mind, we know how many times we've been right, we know how many times they've been wrong, and we know we're winning. And we don't want to say it out loud, but we're waiting for that perfect moment whenever they come at us because of this so that we can say, yeah, but I've been keeping records of wrong. I know what to do. It doesn't keep records of wrong. It continues on, and he says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. There's rejoicing. There's excitement. I don't want to see you fail. I want to celebrate your successes, even if it means I don't get to go as far, even if it means I don't get to do as much. I want to celebrate. I don't want to rejoice in when you've been undermined and you've been cut. He continues on, and he says this. It always protects, and there's our word, it always trusts, it always hopes, and it always perseveres. This is an incredible passage when it talks about relationships, whether you're talking marriage relationships or you're talking neighbor relationships, you're talking friend relationships, whatever relationship you're referencing. This idea that the love, the agape love that is supposed to be identified in relationships, it always protects. It always trusts, and it's not conditional trust. As long as they don't hurt me, I won't hurt them. It is an always trust. It always hopes. It always perseveres. And then it finishes it off and it says, love, or agape love, this selfless love, it never fails. It never fails to move the relationship closer together. It never fails to change people. And you know who it changes? It doesn't just change the person that you love. It has a changing agent in you as well. It has this idea that I'm going to give of myself for the benefit of others. So what does this look like? What does this really say? And here's what I want to encourage and what I think that this love should look like, this trusting should look like. The first thing is when we think about it, love always trusts, and trust gives the benefit of the doubt. When it comes to relationships, regardless of where we're at, when it comes to those relationships and we're having a hard time trusting, not the person that's just diminished the trust and undermined it forever, but those other relationships, the relationships where we're having a hard time trusting because of what that hurdle has brought into my life. Love always trusts, and trust gives the benefit of the doubt. What else does it do? It looks for the most generous explanation for the other person's behavior. I mean, you think about what it would look like in your friendships if this was known the way you loved each other. If this was the way you handled your neighbor. I'm just going to give them the most generous explanation for why they drove in my yard last night. Nobody drove in my yard, by the way. What would this look like in your work relationships if you just chose to say, I'm going to look for the most generous explanation for why the other person is constantly late? I'm going to look for the most generous explanation for why the other person constantly doesn't do his work and I have to do it for him. Now, there comes a point where they need to get fired, right? Like, that's not for you. You can't hold that grudge. You can't be saying they need to be gone, they need to be fired. You're the one who says, you know what? I'm not going to let what they've done affect my friendships, and so I'm going to choose to trust. But the struggle is real. I mean, it's easy for me to strap on a microphone and tell you all this stuff. But isn't it true that it's really hard to be in the moment, to be in the struggle and have the broken trust, to have the relationship that's hurting, to have the marriage that is falling apart, to have you name it, and you're sitting there and you're looking at this mountain of broken trust, and you're trying to turn and have relationships with other people. All the while, everything you're seeing is how I will never be able to trust because this is what has happened here. I don't want to get into this relationship because there's so much to be said. There's so much to help. There's so much opportunity for counselors and other people to step in. But I want to look at a couple of ways that we can keep that relationship from affecting all relationships. And the first thing is this. So how do we regain trust? The first thing that I would say is this, is trusting Jesus frees us to trust others. If you're having a hard time trusting other people, I want to invite you to begin to trust Jesus with your life. I want to invite you to begin to open that door and trust Jesus with everything he's done for you. We talked last week about your identity. We talked about how an identity is something that can be very circumstantial and fearful and fragile if it's based upon what we do. When we begin to trust Jesus with our life, it changes the way we see our friends. Because, and something that I have chosen to believe is that when I have interacted with, when I've had the opportunity of placing my faith, my courage, placing my confidence in Jesus, he's never let me down. Now, I haven't gotten everything I wanted. He's not a genie. I don't rub my magic Bible and then all of a sudden I get whatever I want. But when I don't get what I want, oftentimes down the road, I look back and I see that I'm so grateful I didn't get what I wanted. Because I'm able to look at life from a different perspective. And one of the things I would challenge us in this idea is I've seen the best way to deepen a relationship, the best way to build trust is through shared experiences. I mean, you think about the times that you've gotten to go and serve on a mission trip together. You think about the times you've gotten to go serve in a nonprofit together. You think about the times that you've gotten to go and play tennis or play hockey or go, you have a running club and you're like, we all go running together. And that's really fun. I promise. I've tried that before and I would like to get back into it. But that shared experience oftentimes builds a strong relationship. You think about the cowboy lovers in here. There's a shared bond between you and me, right? Like, I'm getting us out in just a few minutes, don't worry. Like, there's a shared bond that grows the relationship together. And I want to ask you this. How are you sharing your life with Jesus? How are you inviting him into your rhythms? How are you inviting him into your life? Because sharing life with him is going to be a thing that grows our relationship together. And it grows you closer to him to where when hurdles come, when hiccups come, we can step into our identity and know I am a child of God. I am his. I am who he says I am. And this isn't okay, this isn't right, but I'm going to continue to move forward because I'm trusting Jesus every step of the way. How have you begun to invite Jesus into your rhythms, into your life? Because for us to trust again, the best way is for us to begin by trusting Jesus because it frees us to trust others. The second thing that I would encourage you with is this, and this is with the other relationships, and is this, and we're not going to spend as much time on these next two. Trust is a choice. It's not a result. Trust is a choice. It's you waking up every day and choosing to make the most generous explanation for why the bed wasn't made. It's waking up every morning and choosing to come up with the most generous explanation as to why that happened. It's choosing to come up with the most generous explanation and say, you know what? I love you and I'm for this relationship and I want to pour trust into the relationship. It is a choice. It's a choice we get to make. The third thing is this. Trusting Jesus frees us to trust others. Trust is a choice, not a result. And becoming trustworthy matters. It's not just about what they do. It's about becoming trustworthy. It's about becoming a man or a woman of your word. It's about becoming an individual that is worthy of trust. That when relationships come apart, when relationships are struggling, it's about you being that rock, you being that individual that can be trusted. And it's choosing. I'm going to work on my character. I'm going to work on the who I am, not what I do. I'm going to work on the inside, and I'm going to trust those around us, and I'm going to become trustworthy. You see, choosing trust, and this is the hurdle. This is why it's such a struggle. This is why there's a challenge here, because I really believe that choosing trust, it absolutely may cause pain. But refusing to trust guarantees pain. Choosing to trust again will cause somebody, will cause you, will cause tension and hurdles and struggles, of course. But if we never choose to trust again, it will guarantee isolation, loneliness, frustration. You'll always have that chip in the back of your mind that they're just going to fail me too. And life becomes watered down and hurting. So my challenge is this, would you trust Jesus so that it can open the door for you to trust others freely? Would you choose to trust those in your circle? And would you become trustworthy? Regardless of what the outside influences say, adulting is hard. I mean, let's be honest. Every relationship we have requires trust. And if we don't put trust in our life, it will guarantee pain. So would you choose to trust? Would you choose to become trustworthy? And would you choose to begin by trusting Jesus as your Savior? Now today, I just want to give you some homework. I know I'm not a teacher, so there's no test next Sunday. But what we talked about today is a little difficult. It's hard. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, I mean, there's a lot of weight in what we just talked about. But I want to encourage you to talk, to share, to stir the conversations around what we said in your lunch place, maybe in the course of your week. In fact, this week on social media, we're going to post a couple of questions to kind of help stir the conversation. But don't worry, I know you're like, whoa, how do I read that? That's like super small. And some of you are like, I'm so bored. I just really want to read it. I'm going to pull out regardless of where you're at. I want to encourage you today to do this. Read 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. It's what we talked about today. It's Paul's love chapter, if you will. And I want you to ask yourself, how would your life and relationships be different if you could love like that? How would your marriage be different if you could love like that? How would your neighborhood, your job, how would your life be different if you could love like that? God, we love you and we thank you. God, I thank you, number one, that when I fell off the stage, I was caught. But God, so many times in our life, we have expectations, and those expectations are just completely obliterated. And God, I don't want to make light of the fact that there are individuals in this room that are navigating the course of this conversation based upon the actions of their life, based upon relationships that maybe 5, 10, 20 years down the road, there was a pivotal circumstance that trust was obliterated, and it has festered and caused hurdle upon hurdle even to this day. God, I pray that we not necessarily running into that specific hurdle, but God, I pray that with each and every one of us that we would choose to trust because it makes our relationships around us today richer. God, I pray that we would choose, regardless of what they do, to become trustworthy. And God, I just ask that the center of our trust would be founded in trusting in you. God, it is a difficult concept, a difficult thing to wrap our arms, but God, give us the confidence and the courage just to take that step and to trust you with our life. God, we need you, we love you, and we thank you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Amen.